Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
测试1、2、3。
Yes. Good. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Give me a second. I will check. We are online.
I think someone wants to ask something. Hello. Yeah. We have a lecture on now. If you want to join. Maybe we need a better German speaker.
Kannst du das kurz machen? Ich kann nicht.
I don't know, maybe.
Aha, aber wir haben jetzt da Schulung. Ja, Sie können gerne ein anderes Mal sich das anschauen.
Ein Prospekt oder was für die Preise?
Das ist alles online.
Ja.
Die Visitenkarte ist draußen zur Entnahme, bitte.
Verstehen. Wiedersehen.
Gut.
Okay, let's switch to full screen. Let's make sure this works. Where's the mouse? Okay.
Good. I think we are ready. Are you ready too?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Then we start.
Okay, are we live already?
Sorry, what?
Are we online already? Well,
Yes.
we can start now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great you're here. Now this is the first cultural class on Chinese history. In studying any Chinese art or cultural topic, we often come to discussions where we claim some things are, so to say, almost every Chinese kid knows. Okay, so you wonder what are the things that a Chinese kid really knows, and maybe this shows you a perspective from a over average Chinese kid, right? So I have basically prepared this class when I was sitting there on the floor. I wrote down the things which I considered to be important on top of my head. I wrote on 3 A4 pages saying, okay, these are the things I remember on top of my head from Chinese history, and afterwards I filled in the details. And here is the cultural class you're going to see today. Of course, we're going to cover about 3,000 years of time in about 3 classes, so not too much, only 1,000 every class. And those are maybe an overview only, as the title suggests. It's by no means a complete introduction to Chinese history, but it would be my honor to share with you my understanding of Chinese culture. And of course, this has something based on my own preference, what I consider to be more interesting. And that's what culture is. It's our connection with the legacies. First, we look at the Chinese views on history and how do Chinese people consider history? What is the meaning of it? First, we look at Confucius, who actually collected information and made the book 𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕟, which gave the name to the spring-autumn period. It's based on this book. And it is said that Confucius established 春秋, and the rebels and thieves fear it. Here, from 孟子, 孔子乘春秋而乱臣贼子惧. And what does that mean? Because Confucius saw history as a way of passing judgment. He considers the things happening to have certain right and wrongs. And he would like to record them in a sense that he says this is moral or this is immoral. And it is described in the following: 一字之褒，荣于华滚；一字之贬，言于抚乐。抚乐 here means acts which represents punishment. So, one word of compliment, right, is more valuable and prestigious than gorgeous dress, and one word of criticism is harsher than the punishment of acts. Here is a direct example. You see that if you say that someone kills someone else, in ancient Chinese, the records are written in different verbs. So if you say you Zhou killed someone, using this verb means that you killed someone because this person is making trouble for other people, and you killed the villain to save the day. This is you Zhou someone. Shi means you rebelled against your upper level, your king, without justification. So you're a rebel. Yeah? And that is the way Chinese people look at this. And you can already see something. We have those examples showing here, and Chinese people at the time like to use verbs with only one character. In Wen Tianxiang, 正气歌, so this is an article he wrote when he was imprisoned by the Mongols, and he said, 在其太史简, 在晋董狐比. Both examples refer to historians at the time, actually in the spring, autumn, and warring state period. Yes, is that a question?
Yeah. Has this book been taken as a legal codex, as a justice codex also?
This is the point I'm getting to. Oh. Yes. Yeah. So in these examples, the historians, actually the historians working for the royal court, they insisted in writing down what the people in power did wrong. In both cases, they said someone murdered the king without justification. It's unjust. And even if this leads to the death of the historian, they insisted in doing so. So we can see that Chinese people, especially the scholars, they hold this idea, especially you can see in recording history. They are not only doing records for practical purposes, which year there was drought and who said what. They uphold this higher value that they are being responsible for history as a higher idea, because this is the guidance for later generations, or maybe also a constraint, or basically something there to stop people from doing bad. And in Chinese history, throughout, you can see the roles of scholars or historians. It is those people who basically hold a particular position, on the moral ground. So the interplay between power and those people, actually play important roles in Chinese history in many events. Of course, this means that Chinese people tend to see history or historical records as a moral guideline. There are good and bad examples, and this also means sometimes people can manipulate this because, of course, in most cases, histories are written by the winners. So I don't know what the losers have to say, but if the winners get to say who is right, they will say who is right. And also people would get into this idea of forcing judgment You know, they always want to figure out who is right and who is wrong, even though in some cases this really would be oversimplifying the story. And in fact, they know this. Right? So the next quote states from Zigong, this is a student of Confucius actually. So he said, 奏之不善, 不如是之甚也. It means that this king, Zhou Wang, so his evilness is not as exaggerated, you know, as we normally say. It's not that crazy. Therefore, a gentleman would hate to have a stain because then all the bad things would be attributed to him. You know, if you are considered a bad guy, then everything that happened in your time would be blamed to you. So they know that this way of writing history leads to exaggerations like this and leads to things which are sort of distorted. But they want this because this is like the educational resource that they leave for later generations. Rico. Okay, and what else are Chinese people trying to do with history? Here's the quote from Tai Shigong. So this is the person, Sima Qian, the grand historian, if you look up in English. He made the huge collection of historical records in the Han Dynasty. From the time, starting from the myth of the starting point of Chinese civilization to basically his time. And he said, what do I want to do with this collection of records? 日以就天人之际，通古今之变，成一家之言. So he would like to investigate the connection between heaven and humans, right? How is there any rule or Tao that determines how things go? Yes.
When did this guy live?
This is the Han Dynasty, so more than 2,000 years ago, starting roughly.
So he collected, you know, in a formal period.
It's really old, yes. So of course he only wrote records up to that point. Yeah, but later on you have to rely on other sources. But in the things we're going to see today, I've taken many quotes from his collection. Yeah. So he would like to investigate the connection between heaven and humans, and to understand general rules, right, through ancient time to now, 通古今之变, so from before to now, how things changed. Is there any understanding we can take from that? Yeah? And to establish the perspectives of one system. So he also stated that this is my school of saying, you know, this is my perspective.
Sorry.
Yes?
What is exactly the meaning of heaven here? What does he mean by heaven and humans?
So, okay, the question is what's meant by heaven? I think it would be easier if we look at many examples, but loosely Chinese people in the old times, they refer to heaven as a kind of higher power. It doesn't particularly refer to any religion, right? It depends on maybe which religion they have at the time, but in general, they believe that the sky or the heaven has its way and its will. Yeah, but not necessarily a conscious mind. Yeah. Okay, and Tang Taizong. So secondly, the quote from the second emperor of the Tang Dynasty. So this is like 1,500 years ago. And it said, if we use copper as mirror, right? Because in the old times they take a piece of copper and polish it. This is the mirror. Before they learned the coating technique, of course. Then one can correct dress and hat. Okay, you know, am I looking all right? And if you take history as mirror, then you know rise and fall. And take people as mirror, you can be clear about gain and loss. In this quote, he is actually talking about one of his advisors. He wants to say that this advisor is my good mirror because he always tells me when I consider something wrong. Yeah? But you can see how Chinese people value history. In general, it is so. Next one is a bit long. I didn't write out the full translation, but it says, you know, people spend 20, 30 years to study the books, the writings, the books left by the wise people. But when they encounter some issues, they're just like anyone else you can find on the street. And why is that? And some people would just listen to one old story and they would benefit for a lifetime. Does that mean just one saying on the street you can find is better than all the old wisdoms? It's because that if you read books but you don't think about how to use them, how to translate them into wisdom, then it's empty, right? Because if you see a turmoil in history, you just say, okay, that's what it is. And if you see one incident, you only consider it as one incident. What can you gain from there? So when looking at history, you should consider yourself inside the situation and ask, you know, when you read and go to that place and you just cover up the book and ask yourself, what would I do if I was in that situation? Right? 使我欲迟等事，当作何处之? So what would I do in that situation? If you look at history that way, then you can not only improve knowledge, but you can improve wisdom. And that's why it's beneficial. Okay, this one is quite new. This is about less than 100 years ago. But it's kind of important and interesting for, I guess, for Chinese history, you know, particularly for Chinese people. So this is qianmu, who wrote 国史大纲. It's like a summary of the history of our nation, saying that, okay, so this is the forward. Okay, for those who read this book, please first have the following ideas. First one, you should believe that the citizen of any nation, especially those claim to be having knowledge above average, you must have understanding of the past of the nation. Otherwise, you're only at most a person with knowledge, not someone who is a knowledgeable citizen. Secondly, what I mean about knowing your history is that you must also have a sentiment and respect for the history of your nation. Otherwise, it would be just knowing some foreign history you don't care. Next, what I mean by having sentiment and respect for the nation's history is that you would at least not hold the view that all the things in the past were empty and meaningless, and that all the troubles and mistakes we have now were from previous people, that we are standing at the highest point of history, and whatever doesn't work out was their fault. You know, this would be a contempt towards your own culture. Lastly, when a nation has citizens mostly acquiring those conditions, then the development of the nation forward has hope. This was written around the time of the Second World War. So, you know, when the Japanese invasion concerned him that maybe the nation and the culture would be gone. And he was writing this to tell the people. You know. Now let's look at China. So this is a very rough map that basically I drew, but of course it's not really accurate where the rivers are. And that's the point, because the rivers were changing. Next one. Civilization, of course, that usually happen where water is easily available. There are different archaeological sites which we can find, and these are only the more famous ones, and especially the ones, there's the ones around the Yellow River, Huanghe. The river is named yellow because it has so much mud and sand inside. It's yellow. And there's the Long River. The river is so long that the name is Long River. The different sections has different names. So for English speakers, you're probably more familiar with the name Yangzijiang. And that shows basically only a few of them. If we look at the next slide, next slide. So you can find more detailed maps, and if you search those names, you can find more details about what they have in the in the cave. And here is a brief view of China in the ancient time. And you might ask why it looks like this. There is an area named Zhongyuan, or loosely was referred to as Zhongyuan, the central plain. And they view the people outside to be barbarians, basically, right? So in each direction, so in the south, Man, and west, Rong, east, Yi, and in the north, Di. So the different clans in different directions, they each have different names referring to them. So here you see the example that Chinese people in the old time, they're also used to using nouns in only one character, which is sort of in contrast to now. We tend to have a lot of names in 2 or 3 characters. Okay, and why is that the people have this view that the other people are just barbarians or they don't matter? Especially when you see that we have multiple sites showing there were civilizations all over the place, right? Because, of course, everyone would consider themselves to be the most important. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so here is a timeline of Chinese history. You often hear that Chinese history is about like 5,000 years. And this is like a common saying that has been said all over the place. If you look at the timeline, in fact, it will be about 4,600 to 700. It's a rounded number. And this section is actually legend. So that there is no clear correspondence with archaeology or any other finding, especially when there was no preserved writing. We can only say these are the things we have heard, from before. And these people are basically legends. Now, if we look at the names of the periods, you have the 3 dynasties, Shandai, Xia, Shang, Zhou, and then the unification happened in Qing dynasty over here. Then the Han dynasty, the longest period in Chinese history. Then Wei Jing Nanbei Cao, this is like a name loosely referring to the really complicated period where China was split, basically, and then unified again in Sui, and then Tang dynasty, which most people know, and then Wudai Shiguo. Then again unification into Song, but then China is split into north and south. Then Yuan, which is the Mongols, and Ming, Qing, which is ruled by Manchus. When I was small, in school, we were required to memorize this sequence somehow. Now, there are different variations, slightly, how you memorize these things. But what you can see is basically it has a line. It's like a linear narrative. And so this brings back the question about the central plain, because these are the people who developed writing first. So they had the clearest records. And also, in the course of history, although they started to conquer the neighbors or get mixed with other people, the concept of China and also the space of China expanded gradually, but they had always remained the more central people. Of course, in their records and in their perspective, they have been always self-centered. And this is why China was considered to have started in this central plane, like the central place of the world. And that's why this is the way we see it, that there is only one line that passed down from the ancient time to now. Because all the other ones, or most of them, either have not been recorded or they were sort of neglected. But this is also what people, not only what people believe, but what people want to believe. Because it means that we have one period and the next dynasty would basically take over the legacies of the ancestors and say, now we take China. And therefore there's this line which is the narrative that you basically identify with. This is China, and we came from this source. All right, so as I said, there's the period really long ago that was not really certain. And then there's the time which we know to be using bronze. And then in the warring periods, people started using iron tools, especially in farming and weapons. And then there's the famous Three Kingdoms and the North and South dynasties. There are two periods, especially when China was ruled by basically northern nomads, big empires, however. And it's around this time that the rough shape of the modern border of China took shape. So it basically, including the western parts, now you see in the modern map of China. Yeah. All right, so there are a lot of events and important things, including basically, exploring the West region, which later on became the heavily used Silk Road for some time, and receiving Buddhism from India and producing paper, making carved printing, and later on movable printing. Figuring out how to use explosive, building the old Great Wall and the new Great Wall, and there's also a lot of interaction with the neighbors. The travel to the west, as known by the title of the novel, and cultural exchange with Japan. How China influenced Japan in the Tang Dynasty was really interesting, and also the development of foreign religions in China, and interaction with Tibet and then Arabs. And paper making was taken to the West by Arabs. And we will look at this, more times in the later classes. So now we can go ahead and look at the understanding of China. So how did China develop as a concept? Right? Starting from the clans which use stone tools and fighting each other. As a political concept, if you look at the character over here, this is the Chinese character for country or nation. And in fact, it looks like this square box representing the city walls. So in the old cities, you would have like this square shape, and the important buildings are inside. There was, of course, some kind of ambiguity in the old times because you have this city, and this is a political unit. And later on, it's of course generalized to the broader sense of a country or nation. And Chinese people in the ancient time considered themselves to be central, and therefore 中国, the name of China, is like the central or the middle kingdom. So this is in the spring-autumn period. Suppress the rebellions of you southern barbarians, have no trespassing into the middle kingdom, right? So this is someone in the central government talking to the southern people, saying, you know, no offense shall be made to the middle kingdom. Guanzhong, we will talk about this person later on, and he compliments his king. The Qi Lord defends middle kingdom and resists the barbarians. Yeah. And we can look at how the southern people see themselves. This is one, Chu Zhuangwang, he is a king in a southern kingdom, which is considered to be barbarian by the northern people. It's like the people more in the north say, you know, those uncivilized people. But he said, hey, I'm a savage. But today all the lords all betray, invade, and kill each other. I have arms, and I would like to observe the politics of the Middle Kingdom. Observe here, you know, 日观中国之政. It means to interfere. Basically, I want to have a say in the Chinese politics in the Middle Kingdom. I asked the royal court to acknowledge my title. So he would like to be part of the big Chinese family. Say, I claim this title, and I asked the central government to acknowledge this. Let's go to the next one.
Sorry, does the name China mean something?
I mean, there are different sayings about how this English word or European word came about. But usually when we say China, for a Chinese person, when you say China, 中国, it means in the center. 中 is like in the middle, right? The center nation or kingdom. And I have already used this term in the quotes, right? So people already started to use this concept, although it didn't refer to China as we know now. It was more referring to the central area of the continent. Yeah? And China, of course, more importantly, it's actually a cultural identity. So in Yuan Dao, this is written by a scholar in the Tang Dynasty. 诸侯用以礼则夷之，夷狄近于中国则中国之. So I have to explain this a little bit. 诸侯 is like the lords, right? So the kings in the feudal system, basically, these are the noble people. If the lords would use the barbarian ways, we will consider them to be uncivilized barbarians. And if the barbarians were our neighbors, they would come into the Middle Kingdom, come into China. We would regard them and treat them as of the Middle Kingdom. And this is a kind of writing structure in Chinese that the first sentence and the second sentence use different verbs, but you should actually cross-reference and say that means the later sentence also implies the verb in the first sentence. So it means not only the neighbors enter into China, but that they conform into Chinese conventions. They use the courtesy, you know, and the culture in the Middle Kingdom. Then they are of the Middle Kingdom. They are Chinese. So it is really an identity based on values. If you would behave in certain ways, you are considered to be of the Middle Kingdom, to be Chinese or barbarians, because you identify yourselves with this culture, then you're Chinese. Okay, and later one, this is taken from an article. If we speak of land or position, then yes, there is the distinction between Hua and Yi. Hua refers to China, Yi refers to barbarians. But in terms of education or civilization, is there also this idea? Hua Yi, the distinction is at the heart. And so basically, there are people who are born in the central kingdom, but they act as barbarians. They have no morals, they have no courtesy. Then they're only Chinese outside, but their hearts are barbarians, right? There are people born outside and they act according to moral standards. They're good people. They're Chinese people. So it's a name that sort of implies this pride that if you have the moral standards, if you act as a polite person, a considerate person, you're civilized, you're Chinese. This is the old view of, how people identify China. Okay. Now, of course, we know China is also considered an idea of ethnicity, right? Chinese people, we say all the time. But we also know that China is not actually simply one race. There's so many different sources. So the evolution of China as a national state, I put in a actually quite simplified schematic. So if you examine this in detail, you find many mistakes. But we only look at the qualitative idea. Basically from the old times, the Middle Kingdom to Han Dynasty, they formed this idea that these people are called the Han people, the Han Chinese. And later on, there was the rebellion of the 5 barbarians, which we will talk about in the next class. They basically later on mixed and intermarried and blended into China. Now they're one. In the Tang Dynasty, you see a huge variety of those things. Like there are different people in that area, and they have different culture, and it's a very complicated time, but also it has a lot of culture. Yeah? Later on into Song Dynasty, this is the time when Chinese people, or the Chinese people, so to say, that you will remember in the line of names when you memorize the Chinese timeline. Song Dynasty is considered to be China, and the northern people are the nomads. They are enemies. So it is a period when people started to again really emphasize the distinction. I'm Chinese, you're from outside. So this strengthened their idea of identity. And of course, later on came the Mongols, and they conquered basically the northern part, including the people considered as nomads as well, and the southern Chinese people. The Mongols didn't stay very long, and they didn't really come into China and combine with China at that time. They were kicked out by the Ming Dynasty, and later on, the Manchus were actually the Jin people. They conquered China. This is the last dynasty of China with emperors. And this is the period with a lot of expansion. So they took what's known as Xinjiang, the new territory. The name suggests itself to be a newly taken place. This is where now you see a lot of Muslims, and they are not actually the same as the Eastern Chinese people. And also the Qing Dynasty took control over Tibet, and they also gradually brought in the Mongols. And so there are a lot of Mongols in China still today, although northern Mongolia is already a separate country. But southern Mongolia, is still in China, and there are a lot of Mongolian people. So up to this point, it is a time when China was under invasion from Western imperialism at that time. And of course, that stimulates the sense of danger and say, you know, our nation is, you know, going to fall any time. And again, this sort of stimulates people to think about, you know, their position or their identity as Chinese people. And at about the end of the Qing dynasty and, you know, around the time of the revolution, this scholar Liang Qichao, he was the one who basically proposed and then advocated the name of 中华民族. This is the term used today as the Chinese nation or the Chinese race. And when he did that, around that period, what they wanted to promote and emphasize is the idea of 五族共和. So they want to include the Han Chinese people, the Manchus, the Mongolians, and Tibetan and Hui in Xinjiang. Like all these people, that's have a big family of the Chinese nation. So this is actually a constructed idea instead of the status quo. Because obviously those regions, the additional regions were taken by the Qing dynasty in the early years of Qing dynasty, which is like more than 300 years now, from now. But of course, they are not the same as the Eastern Chinese people. This is the wish, you know, they want to have the big family. And of course, you can see the term used, 中华民族, today by Chinese people a lot, but primarily still referring to the culture of the Han Chinese. These are the people who had been the most dominant throughout Chinese history because, you know, in the early days they developed writing first, and then they were always taking this position as, you know, they were associated or they represent China. So this is actually a very dominant idea. So even now, when you hear people use the term 中华民族, you know, it can mean all the people in China now politically, but culturally it still is a very biased term referring to the Han Chinese. Oh wait, so and later on, let's look at the next content. So this is quote taken from 资治通鉴, and again this is from Tang Taizong, the second emperor of the Tang dynasty. He says, and I didn't put down the full translation. It says, from ancient times, everyone had favored Zhonghua, the central people, over the barbarians. Zheng, that means king, king calling himself. I care for them all the same. That's why they trust me like a parent. And he used the term 中华. This is the central Chinese people, right? And you can see it's the same word here. Okay? And later he said, 中国百姓, okay, the people of the citizens of the central kingdom is the root of the world, blah blah, and the barbarians, they are like the leaves. He again used a very common term, 中国. So you can see that on the one hand, there is of course a continuation from ancient times. You know, there is this China, and culturally it's always growing. And from really early on, people already had the idea of 中华, the Chinese culture as an entity, or 中国, you know, the China or the central kingdom as a political idea. They were never, until modern time, they were never formally used as the name of the government or the nation, but the concept was really early, right? So on the one hand, it is so. And on the other hand, of course, China now includes a lot more people of different backgrounds And of course, they agree or disagree with this to different degrees. Okay, so now Huaxia, right? This is the name. Hua actually is Tongtongzi, so it's equivalent to Hua, which means flower. So it's like a way Chinese people call themselves, saying, you know, we're like blossom, you know, we're a beautiful race. Xia, actually the same as the name of the first dynasty we will look at. So this is believed to be more than 4,000 years ago, and the beginning of the Chinese civilization. So you see the yellow emperor Huangdi. There is still a symbolic tomb, well, of course, which is established much later. There's nothing inside. We don't know where he was buried, or we don't even know if this name is correct or if it refers to a real single person. But there is the idea that he represents the time of the beginning of Chinese civilization. At his time, his officers created writing, created the writing tool, the 𝕁𝕠𝕚𝕟. And his wife, Luozu, figured out how to keep silkworms. And you know, people learned how to construct houses, how to do a lot of things, you know, in terms of technology in his time. And there's also another name, the Yandi, Flame Emperor. So it is believed that maybe this person is the leader of another clan. He figured out how to use fire, or maybe, in fact, he figured out how to use fire applying to agriculture. And it's possible these two clans started to cooperate somehow, and they became one village or something, right? And the Huangdi was also known to had the battle with 𝕚𝕣𝕖𝕒, so they defeated another clan, and then they basically had a sound footing in the Central Plain area. This is the beginning of Chinese history or Chinese civilization. This is beginning, you know, as people believe to be China. All right, then we have come to the three dynasties commonly called Xia, Shang, Zhou. And these are really old, of course, and Xiachao here is still pretty much unknown. So we know that people in here, Shangchao, they consider this to be a real place. Like there was this time and place where there was this government and those people. So it's likely that these people have the right information. But we don't know so much about it because from the archaeological findings, we cannot really find clear correspondence to this. We have some writing from later times saying we know there's this time. And we have findings which like, okay, it's not clear if it's that or whatever. So it remains mostly a legend. But here we know it's a real time and place. There is the Jiaguwen writing on the turtle shell. And this is like the earliest form of Chinese writing that we know today. They write on the turtle shell and maybe they throw this into fire. They're used in basically worshipping or some ritual, trying to talk to the spirits or talk to the ancestors. So here we know that traditionally, Chinese people believe the existence of some kind of spiritual form beyond the living body. So they believe you can talk to the ancestors or the families that already died. If you perform those rituals, they can tell you how they're doing or something is happening. They can give you suggestions. So you can see these things preserved, and they were exactly for this purpose. Next one. And we also find the vessels like this. These are called ding. These are, well, generally speaking, these are tools for cooking, so these are pots. made of bronze. Of course, it's already rusty, but when it was new, it should be shiny. So here you see the pot from Shang period and also the Zhou period. This one actually has a lot of writing on it, carved into the metal. These are not only used for cooking, of course, because they are also things that representing authority. So there are special things used by the government or by the priests, and they represent the authority to talk to heaven or to talk to ancestors, or the authority to rule the people, to take care of the country. Next one. If we look at the writings more closely, you can recognize actually a lot of similarity with writing today. So, the character referring to a person or human with two legs, and from that time it was already written like this, more or less. A lot of them. The field or the farming ground is exactly the shape of the farming ground. And rain is water dropping from the cloud. Mountain, like this shape. The moon is curved. The sun is like a circle. Water is river flowing. Fire, the flame. And you can actually see astonishing similarities, and we still have this culture. It's a continuation from those times. Okay, so now we talk about specifically the three dynasties. So from the time of Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, they were considered to be later on the five ancient emperors. And then there's the transition into what we call the dynasties. So there was the ancient kings Yao and Shun. At that time, they were leaders of the clan, basically, that take care of the people. Yao really liked this young guy. He said, he's a good person, and he has talent. I want the position to be given to him. Shun didn't want to accept it, so he ran away. But when the old king passed away, people came to him. Right? He ran away and said, "Oh no, I don't want to be the leader. You can ask the son of the old king." But people chose to support him, so they followed the suggestion by the old king, saying, "This guy will be the new leader." People go to him when they have problems, and when they need to do something, they discuss with the king. He became the king. You can see from those descriptions, in fact, the country or the clan was actually really small. You're talking about something like a size of a village, where people can just go to the house of the leader and say, "I have trouble, I want to discuss something." And so he became the leader, and as I said, it is really important to consider the water, because people lived around the Yellow River, which is like changing the path all the time. So, every few years or maybe every half year, you will get this trouble when the Yellow River has too much sand and it started to flood and change path and flooded all over the field and killed people. So a very important business at the time is 治水, to manage the water, so that people would do work to basically guide the river flow and to do irrigation and so on. And Yu is such a character, so he is like a very important figure in doing this kind of engineering. So he had really significant contribution to the people. So now the king Shun says, "I like this guy. I want to give my position to him." And so Yu became the leader. And when he gets older, he was looking at the younger engineer saying, he has contribution to managing the water. I want him to be the new king. But then it didn't work out. Somehow people supported the son of the king. And they didn't talk to this guy. So then there was a transition from what's called 禅让, which means I give the position to the capable voluntarily, to 世袭, which means my son will take my place. And so this is the beginning of the dynasty, because now the clan or the country is owned by this family. Now, there are alternative stories telling that maybe it was a setup. There is conspiracy theory that maybe Yu did not really want to support Yi. He said, I want to give you the position, but he already prepared his son to take over. I don't know how much of that is true or which version is more accurate, but still, 禅让 remains a very strong idea in Chinese culture, because it says that you care for the people and you want to give the position of the leader to someone who can actually take care of them. And it's also a very selfless idea, because you don't say, I want to give power and wealth to my family. I want to do the best for the people. Right? So this remains a really important idea in Chinese culture. Whether or not all of these stories were true, this is a virtuous concept. Okay, then began Xia dynasty. Till the end, there was a king, Xia Jie, and he was really cruel. He treated the people badly. And then, of course, there is the first king of the next dynasty who would overthrow him. So it is said, the 汤武革命顺天应人, the revolution complies with the will of the heaven and answers to the people. You start to see a pattern. There's a dynasty that was established because it has the capability and the virtue to guide the people, to take care of the country. And if it turns bad, now the kings have no way, no will to lead the people. They just want, luxury for themselves, and they treat the people badly. Then someone will take over and say, look, I will do things from now on. And this is like the pattern you already see, because again, at the end of Shang dynasty, there is the king, which is said to be really crazy. He is only enjoying life, spending a lot of money, and people are poor. And he constructed for himself and his wife the wine pool and meat forest. So it's basically a place where they can just drink from the big pool and take meat from wherever. So this is like a party room for them to just enjoy the meat and drink wine. They don't care about the people. And therefore, the next dynasty would take over. Zhou Wenwang and Zhou Wudang. So this is the king that is associated with the Bagua. So we might talk about this at a later time. Anyway, so when Wudang, Wudang is the son, when he led the army to defeat Shangzhou, it is said, so in the contingent of the Shang army, the soldiers didn't support the Shang government. They turned direction and killed their own soldiers. Okay, so that's sort of the pattern we can start to see. And again, this is a pattern that people not only believe, but want to believe. This is the thing that people want later people to learn from history. The next one. Okay, then we come to the Zhou dynasty. Now it's getting into more details. So the Zhou is split into Xizhou and Dongzhou. There's the east and there's the west and the east. That should be west. What this means is they have different positions of the capital. When the dynasty is somehow interrupted, they move the capital. So in the West period, in the first period, they didn't know this name. This is a name given by later people, say, that's like the Western Zhou period. They only call themselves Zhou. So what happened was there was a king later on, when he got onto the throne, he was a kid. So there was this uncle who assisted him. So Zhou Gong is the one that assisted the king. And he made a really important step in Chinese culture, which is 治理作乐. So he wrote down basically the manners or courtesy according to which people should behave. And he promoted the use of music, right, to cultivate the mind. So he believes if we have 礼节 or 礼教, which means the manners or courtesy which regulate how you should interact with people, this is to tell you how to keep appropriate distance when you interact with other people, when you do things. And when you have music, so that you would make the mind really in peace, right? With those two things, he believes the country will be in harmony. And this is an idea later on that was taken by Confucius. So in his school of philosophy, he often talks about this. He really emphasized this idea of 礼乐. And this is an integral part of Chinese culture. All right, of course, he's taking the position to assist the king. Later on led to the rebellion of 3 other noble people called 三监之乱. But anyway, much later on, there was another king. At the end of this period, so you might ask what kind of stupid stuff this guy has to do to end the period. So Zhou Youwang and Bao Si is his second wife. Now he is so into this wife, and the wife doesn't seem to smile very much. So once they were just taking a look at the beacon station. Basically, this is the place where you have a tower and the walls, and you can light the fire and say, hey, we have trouble here because the neighbors are attacking. When the fire is lit, all the nearby lords and generals, they should come and support. And the wife was asking, so what happens when we light this fire? Okay, we will try. We do this. Yeah? So they lit the fire, and all the lords, they rushed in with soldiers and said, okay, what's going on? Where's the enemy? And the wife was laughing loud, and the king was pleased. Well, my wife doesn't smile so much, and now she's laughing. So they did this multiple times. And also, he likes the second wife so much, he wants the son of the second wife to take over. Now, his firstborn was supposed to be the heir of the kingdom, but he took him away. So the son ran away to his maternal grandfather and said, my father has given me up, and he's not happy. So the grandfather said, now let's talk to the other country, Quanrong. This is the barbarian to the west. So they schemed to let the barbarians into the war. So they attacked the capital. And that means the son now can take over, right? The firstborn son is supported not only by Quanrong and his grandfather. Now the father is killed. He took over. He became Ping Wang. But this is a big issue because he schemed with his grandfather to kill his father. That means as a leader, he has no credibility to the nobles anymore. He moved to the east because now the west side is completely a mess. There's like the lords fighting with the barbarians, and also the lords don't support him. He went east. So that started the period of Dongzhou, the east period. Now we come to another important figure. Guanzhong, we already read his quote from above. Guanzhong is in Qi kingdom, and he is like the Xiang, which if you would translate to English, is more like prime minister. So he's like the prime minister of the Qi kingdom. He summoned the meeting of the lords and promoted the idea of we should defend the king and repel the barbarians. So Confucius actually commented about this person. If not for Guanzhong, we would have draped hair and clothes opening to the left. Okay, draped hair is easy to understand because the barbarians, they don't have the convention of tying up the hair. The opening of the clothes to the left refers to the convention of the barbarians. Because at the time, the Hanfu, the clothing of the Han people, right, although they didn't use the name Han at the time, opens like this one to the right. This is Youren, this is opening to the right. The reason is, of course, that because we cover first the right-hand side and then the left-hand side over the right, so it looks like this. It's associated with the idea of left and right representing yin and yang. Qigong position, when we do that, we know we have here and here. In this context, the left hand represents yang and the right hand represents yin. And therefore, the male would have one side and female have the other side, because it is considered that male and female have more yang and more yin. In the context of clothing, it's always to the right, because in that, the left and right again represent yin and yang, but here yang means the living energy, and yin is like static, dead. So for a person to have more yang than yin, it should be like this, the left side covering the right. For a person who has more yin than yang, it's dead. The person is dead. So the dress for dead people are the other way. That's why the normal dressing is like, they always dress like this. Now, for the barbarians or the nomads, they don't have the same correspondence. That's why they can open to the left, right? They just, by convention, they open to the left. They don't care. So to have draped hair and clothes opening to the left means they would be ruled by the other race and follow their traditions. Now let's look at the story before we come back to here. This is Guanzhong, the prime minister of the Qi kingdom. He was supporting one prince, one of the two, those two competing for to be the heir of the kingdom. So when their father died, the two princes competed, and like many other cases, the competition turned out to be a bloody one. Guanzhong has a friend, Bao Shuya. They had known each other for a long time, and they turned out to be supporting those two different princes, of the kingdom. So Guanzhong was following Gongzi Zhou, and his friend was supporting Gongzi Xiaobai. And later on, so this Gongzi Xiaobai was the new king of the kingdom. So he was saying, this is said by Guanzhong, he said, when I was poor at the beginning, I did business with Bao Shu, and I often took more share when we split the profit. He did not consider me to be greedy. He knew I was poor. I had given ideas, I planned things for Bao Shu, but we ended up being poorer. We lost money. He did not consider me to be stupid. He knew there are good and bad times. He understands. I had held office positions 3 times and got expelled by the Lord 3 times. He did not regard me as incapable. He knew I didn't have the right time. And I had been in battle 3 times and ran away 3 times. He did not consider me a coward. He knew I had an old mother to take care of. And then the next statement is about when he failed, right? Basically, the prince he supported was killed, and he was put in prison by the other prince because he attempted to kill him. He said, Prince Zhou failed, and Zhao Hu died for him. So Zhao Hu is the other advisor who followed this prince. Now, at that time, it's a very common idea, at least amongst the nobles, that a good person, a loyal person, would only follow one lord in his life. So if this lord or this government would fail, that means that's the end of your career and also the end of your life. So, it would be your honor to die for your lord. So Gongzi Zhou, the prince, already failed and he was killed. So the other advisor killed himself. He chose to die to keep his honor. He did differently. I took insult in prison. He didn't want to die, so he stayed in prison. Bao Shu, my friend, he did not regard me as shameless, because 知我不修小节而耻，功名不显于天下也. He knows I'm not ashamed for this kind of minor principles, but I would be ashamed if my achievements and my name are not seen by this world. Here is an understanding friend. Basically his friend later on recommended him for the new lord and say, yes, he was your enemy, but I know he's a really good person. He's capable. So later on, he served the prince who was his enemy. He said, my parents are those who gave me life, but Baozi is the one that knows me. So this understanding friend gave him the confidence to live on and then achieve. Now, if we go back to, just go down. And then he got this comment, right? So if not for Guanzhong, we would be ruled by the barbarians. We would have draped hairs and clothes opening to the left. He's not only a guy who makes up excuses for his failures. He's the person who has persistence and he really has talent and he achieved. And he is the figure of that time. Guanzhong in Chinese culture is basically a name representing the capability to manage things for organization. When you mention the name Guanzhong, he's the really smart guy who can manage the kingdom and also stabilize the whole Dongzhou in the early years. Okay, but of course, over time, the 𕕚𝕠𝕚𝕟𝕑, which is known as the son of heaven, this is the common leader of the whole China. So there are local lords, and there is the 天子, which is like the emperor, although the formal name of emperor did not exist in the time. They refer to them as the son of heaven, which means he has the destiny to rule this place. You know, as time goes, Zhou Tianzi has lost credit, and the lords respect him less and less. So there is a representative incident when Chu Zhuangwang, again, Chu is the kingdom in the south. This is like the southern barbarian. Okay, so he basically went close to the capital and had his army there, you know, like showing off. And he asked, oh, you know, what size and, you know, how heavy is your pot? And this question is really offensive because he's asking about the container, 国器, the container representing the nation. And he is only a southern lord. He has no business with that. When he asked about the details of this container, he is showing ambition to interfere with the central government. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the 春秋战国, the spring, autumn, and warring states, these are two periods which consist the Dongzhou, the Eastern Zhou period. They are very usually referred to together, right? 春秋战国. This is a time when Chinese culture had a really rapid development because it's a difficult time. There are different local laws. There are also barbarians, the neighbors running around, and the different cities or the different kingdoms, they compete. And the time was restless, and people suffer, and many people are trying to find ways. Now, how can we manage the kingdom? How can we manage the whole country? How can we manage economy? How can we do battle? How can we make peace? And so there are a lot of people which are referred to as 诸子百家. These are the philosophers of different philosophy schools in China. Most of them developed in this period. So according to Sima Tan, so this is the father of the grand historian, he left the comment of 论六家之要义, and so he mentioned like the Taoist, the Confucianism, 墨家, 法家, 名家, 阴阳家. So 6 schools were considered very important by him. 班固 in 汉书, so this was written in Eastern Han period, so afterwards. He said there were 九流十家, so in addition to the 6 道家, 儒家, 墨家, 法家, 名家, 阴阳家, there's also the 农家, 纵横家, this we will talk about later, and 杂家, 小说家. Also, there are people who investigate or basically do things for engineering or farming or investigate mathematics. There are 术数, 方技, 兵书. So there are people who study and discuss and debate military tactics or how to construct the city wall and so on. These people, they are also part of this. And it's also a time with many stories and allusions, what we call 典故. Here you see a few examples, and I only use a few examples. Each of them is a story of wisdom, so to say. These are called 成语. 成语, it means there was a story, and I only refer to it with a short statement. I don't have to tell you the whole story. I just say a feature or a part of the story. So you know what I'm talking about. This is a Chinese way of speaking in really condensed fashion. I would say 4 characters, but it says a lot. Let's look at some of the examples. So, 假道发国, this is one city trying to attack, this is one kingdom, 晋国, trying to attack another city, and they borrowed a path from another city. Say, you know, we're going to attack that city, and we are going to go by your territory. Please just let us through. And then, of course, they took that city. On the way back, they took this city as well. And this is the discussion happening in the city that was asked to lend the path. So in the court, they had this discussion. Yes, okay, you know, the army wants to pass. We'll give them the way. You know, go there and destroy them. And the advisor said, "No, my lord, we cannot do this. You know, we are together with this other city. We support each other. It's like if your lips are gone, your teeth would be cold." 唇亡齿寒. You know, and that's saying if you don't know what you cannot lose, when you lose it, you get the consequence. They did get the consequence. So, 围魏救赵. So this is like when Wei and Zhao, these are names of different kingdoms. Now, when one of them is attacked, and you say, okay, now we're going to save them. How can we do that? The other army is too strong. We cannot go directly there into the battlefield and you know, resist them. No, we don't do that. We go to their country and we siege their capital. So the army would urgently pull back, and you know, the danger is gone. 卧薪尝胆. This is from 越王勾践. So 越王, he had affairs with Wu Guo, so he was defeated by another kingdom, and he was made a servant. He was insulted, and he wanted revenge. He said, "No, I want to revenge Wu Guo. I want to destroy them." So when he went back, he didn't go into his, you know, earlier comfortable life as a lord. He slept on firewood, and every morning he would lick the gallbladder, which is like really bitter. He said, "I'm doing this because I want to remember the harsh days. I will do this every day, so I will never forget the insult that was given to me. So I make sure I work hard and prepare every day for the revenge." In the end, he did it. 𝕒𝕒𝕦𝕟, this is taken from a longer statement. Basically, there was this lord who was sitting there and doing nothing for many years of his position. Well, basically, he only cared about going out for travel, having good food and women. And the advisors would say, "My lord, you need to take care of the problems in the kingdom." He said, "Anyone who has opinion about my life will be killed. You cannot talk about my life." So the advisor said, "I will go to the king. My lord, I heard that there's a really big, beautiful bird in our kingdom. Actually, in the capital here. It has not flied ever. You know, I never see the bird fly. And it never sings. Do you know which bird it is?" The king understands. He didn't talk about his private life, but he understands that was the message. The king replied, "Yeah, well, you know, maybe, you know, the bird never flies, but when it does, it shoots straight to the sky. It never sings, but when it does, it will make astonishing sound." So then he later on changed his behavior and managed the kingdom. You know, talking about taboos without talking about the taboos. And 朝秦暮楚, this is referring to 2 other kingdoms, and this is referring to people who make friends with one kingdom and in the afternoon we would make friends with the other one. You know, these are the people you cannot trust because they will say nice words and later on they will help your enemy. And you don't know which side they really support. They just say nice things and they try to get their benefits. The last one is really interesting. This is about mandarins. So even from the name, you can see this is a Chinese fruit. You know, we already had this fruit from very early days. This is a diplomat from the Qi kingdom. He was visiting another kingdom, and at that time they always had this interesting relationships. So the kingdoms are really competitive, right? And when the advisor or diplomat would visit from another kingdom, they say, let's make a hard question for him, or let's try to embarrass him. And this is the diplomat that went for a visit, and they set this up to have a prisoner going by. So the soldiers were taking a prisoner going by when they were talking, and the king asked, wait, soldier, what's going on there? Who is this guy? This is a citizen of the Qi kingdom. He was stealing. Oh, sir, may I ask, do your citizens often steal? He said, Lord, you know about the fruit mandarin, right? In the south, it's really watery, it's sweet, and it's called the zhi. If you plant the same plant in the north, it's really dry, it's bitter, tastes awful, and it also has a different name. It's from the same kind of seed, but it grows up to be completely different. It is in the environment. So may I ask why the Qi citizen did not steal in our kingdom, and when they come here, they do? No one could say anything afterwards, so let's look at the next one. So by the way, there was this amazing construction. This is again a irrigation system. This is in Sichuan province now. Of course, you see some of the modern stuff from today, but this structure guiding the water to the right-hand side for irrigation, this was built more than 2,000 years ago by Li Bing and his son, if I remember correctly. Next one. So we talked about the Chunqiu and Zhanguo. This is so the first period is spring, autumn. You see the very common weapon used at the time, made of bronze. This is supposed to be put at the end of a stick. So it's kind of like a combination of the axe and the spear. And there are 5 important laws of the time, but if you can look at the map and just see how complicated the situation was. Each name represents one city or one kingdom. And they each have their own government. So each local lord has their own governing system. And all of them, at least superficially, or, you know, so to say, serve the Son of Heaven. But, of course, the Son of Heaven was already losing credit, and, you know, people didn't care about him that much anymore. You know, time goes on, then we move to the warring state, and there is a very important change into the warring states. Not only because it's not the period recorded by Confucius anymore, but that people started to use iron. And people started to make tools with iron. So it is actually possible to make the weapons sharper and more deadly. And warfare also changed conceptually. You know, in the old times, they would have, you know, the armies line up and then charge on both sides, and then, you know, whoever lost, basically, if their the lines were broken, they would admit defeat and go back. This is how the kingdoms usually settle disputes. But we see the record from 孟子, which says, now, 争地以战, 杀人营也, dispute land with battle. And they kill people all over the field. It's all dead people afterwards. Dispute cities with battles, killing people all over the city. So this is now becoming really escalated. It's completely out of hand. They're killing all the time. And there's also the consideration of how to set up relationships, right? So this is, again, the issue with diplomats. They are suggesting that we should do 合纵 or 连横. And that means vertical or horizontal. What does that mean? When you look at the map, when you have vertical, which means you unite this way, you will resist the really strong Qing kingdom from the west. If you do 连横, that means they promote to cooperate with Qing and connect this way. And there is also the strategy taken by the Qing kingdom saying, I will make friends with the neighbors far away and attack my immediate neighbor, so that these people will not make trouble. They will even support me because they want me to make trouble for their enemies. They will also make trouble for the enemy. I will take them down. Then you are next. Right? So there are examples like such. 长平之战. This is a battle between the Qing kingdom and Zhou kingdom. And afterwards, they captured a lot of people. We surrender. And the general said, okay, bury all of them alive. And if you look at movies or novels, you see this mentioned a lot because the Zhou people had a lot of hatred for this. And also they sent people. This is from the Yang kingdom. So the prince hired a strong man to assassinate the king of Qing. This is the story where you have this map and then you roll it out. When you open the map to the end, there's a dagger, and he tried to kill him. All right, now next. Okay, so they, of course, considered or reflected on their strategies or how they managed the kingdom. So, for example, in 𝕐武灵王, so the Zhou kingdom had this change of strategy, saying, we will ride and shoot in Hu clothing. Hu refers to the barbarian, generally to west and north. Why do they now want to dress like the barbarians? Because at that time, the Hanfu, they have really big sleeves and, like I said, really big dress. So this is actually inconvenient for riding and other things. And for the soldiers, they have really heavy armor. So they don't dress like this on horse, but they have really heavy armor. They're completely protected. They're really slow. And the suggestion was, look, we go to the battlefield to defeat the enemy, not to make sure we come back in one piece. Forget about all the armor and the heavy equipment. We will dress like the Hu, the barbarians. We will be light and we'll be fast. And so this is like a military change. Qing here, there is a prime minister at the time, Shangyang, so he made a reform, which is really important, that changed the Qing kingdom. And they started by doing this. They said, we want to change the laws. But how can we make sure people will follow? We have to have credit. So we have to establish credit so that people know they will take us seriously. They put a piece of wood at the gate and say, this is the piece of wood that if you move to the other gate, we'll give you this money. And people look at it, that's a lot of money. Are you serious? Just for moving this piece of wood, like it's really easy. Any, reasonably fit person can do it. So people were just watching. Okay, what kind of joke the government is playing now? I have no idea. Let's just watch. And finally, one person came out and said, okay, I will take this wood. And he took this piece of wood to the other position. And they said, here's your money. Take it away. And people basically spread this story and say, when the government says something, they really mean it. Then they can do things. So they abolished feudalism, basically. They stopped basically the hereditary titles and salary given to the nobles. So basically, there is now no position which is guaranteed for the nobles. I'm a noble, my children get nothing. If they want positions in the government, they have to achieve, and they will be rewarded, right? And they implement counties, so the local governments now, they have officers, not the nobles. These are officers appointed by the king, and they are directly responsible to the king. And they have residence registration and group punishment. Basically, now they register in the city who lives where, which family is here and there. And in your neighborhood, if there is a crime and we didn't find the criminal, everyone in this neighborhood will be punished the same. So they really enhanced social control over this. And they started to open up land development, so there are a lot of land unused, and they say, now we encourage people to farm on the new land, and you can trade land. You can buy new land if you're capable to, take care of more land, do it. And they encourage agriculture, and instead of trading in general, they say, that's encourage production. So this really changed the country from bottom up. And this is the kingdom that will conquer the rest of them. You also see the wars drawn here. At that time, they already had those wars because there were northern nomads invading from time to time. Next one. So then we go to the Qing dynasty. This is the first dynasty that really unified China. So this is no longer a feudal system that has local laws and they do their own things. There is not one emperor who decides everything. He says, I will make this decision and the whole country has to follow. So this is called the first emperor or the founding emperor, the Huangdi. And he evaluated himself saying, myself, 功盖三皇, 得过五帝. So he is referring to the three ancient emperors and the five emperors. They use different terms, Huang and Di. So he gave himself the title, which is the combination of these two titles, Huang Di, that gave the later Chinese term for emperor, Huang Di, which is, from this and this, referring to the ancient leaders. And he said, I have achievements overshadowing the three kings, virtues surpassing five emperors. I'm much better than the ancient kings. Well, so much for the vanity, but at least let's look at what he did. So he really unified China. We say, 书同文，车同轨. From that day on, he said, we will write the same words and drive on the same tracks. Every local kingdom has a different standard. They have slightly different writing or completely different writing. And they have different measurements, so the tracks on which they drive the chariot have different sizes. So if you go to another country, maybe you enter, okay, now the track is different. I have to change my vehicle. It's completely inconvenient. He said, let's unify all the standards. So now we will have the same money, right? Standardize the Currency and all the measurements, weight will be the same, length will be the same. All the money will be the same, all the writing will be the same, communication is the same. If you look at this picture, this is like the variety of money in the warring states. Some of them look at like small knives, and there are some other looking like different shapes, and there's the round one. In the end, yes?
So is this the first time real unification took place?
Unification in the sense that the control is now centralized, right? So the decision making is from the emperor and his court, and everyone has to follow. Before this time, it was more like a feudal system, right? So you would have a local king, which in principle serves the emperor or the heavenly son, right? So they should listen to the tianzi, but they have a lot of control in their own kingdom. They also have their own writing, their own money, everything. This is,
Also in a cultural way.
Indeed, yes, in a cultural way, because and this is a very important point that they unified the writing, because the different kingdoms had different writings, and it is actually from this time now the writing is all the same. And if you go to different regions in China, you will realize that the local dialect can be very different. Some of them you have no chance to understand, but it is because of locking to this writing, the same writing system, that the different local languages, they actually converged. The different clans, they have different culture, different language. They all converge because they are locked in with this writing system. They all became the same language. And with this, we have records and stories preserved to this day. And if you look at the quotes I gave earlier and later on in the class, these are written, a lot of them are written maybe like 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. We can read them today. Directly, there's no decoding or anything. You can read the text and you know what it means. So this unification really shaped China.
So the writing from that point on did change anymore?
It did change, yes. So there are changes and you can compare them. But you would have slightly different forms. Like for certain characters, you see it was written in a different shape then compared to now. But basically, it remained the same word, right? Just the writing may be changed over time. But you can find the correspondence. It is that word, and all the things basically recorded in that time, we can understand now. But he did a lot more, right? He did a lot more. Again, when he unified all other 6 kingdoms, he said, we will abolish feudalism, we will implement counties. These are the units of government that will be directly responsible to the emperor. I will send people. I will say, I assign you to this region, and you will answer to me only. They collected all weapons, that's said, so basically all the metal from all over the country. They forged 12 huge statues in the capital with those metal. So, in the end, there was like no metal left. There's basically all the metal are in those 12 statues. And they started to build the Great Wall. We already saw Great Wall in the previous slide. Partly because all the northern kingdoms, they started to build walls because they were invaded by the northern nomads. And he completely connected all these walls to form a connected defense. Basically, now there's no opening that people can come in through. And also, of course, the driving paths. Now, all of the tracks are the same size. So we will use standardized chariots and the standardized paths. So there's the track that they built to really far away. So this is like the highway at that time. So if they send the chariot, they can go out really fast and send information. Also, he built himself a huge tomb, which is still not open now. I mean, people dare not to open it because we might not have the technology to preserve everything. Also, a very important incident was Shonu. So, in fact, in the court, people suggested, my lord, should we consider going back to the feudal system? And then he was not happy. How can people suggest me? How can people question my decisions? There should be no more philosophy, no more debates. I'm going to make decisions. So they said, and following the suggestion by Li Si, they are going to burn the books. They are really practical in the sense that let's keep all the books for farming and engineering, building, all the philosophy, all the discussion about how to do things, all the debates, let's burn them all. Now luckily we have a lot of things preserved, but we also lost a lot. And the next year, after that decision, they also buried scholars because he wants no challenge. So we can see, of course, Shonu, this term later on became the symbol of his really cruel rule over the country. He basically tortured the people because he wants to be the one who makes all the decisions. He's greater than all the ancient kings. He is the one. No one should say otherwise. And he is so ambitious that he started to build all the great constructions. This burdened the people severely, and people starve or work to death. And of course, this led to the fall of the kingdom really fast. The Qing dynasty only had 2 generations. It was not long after his son took over. Then it was overthrown. Let's go to the next one. Yeah.
But there's also the toilet over there on both sides.
So which ones?
Doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, so Qing Shi, so this is the second generation of the Qing dynasty. He had 2 advisors, or if you would like to translate as prime minister or something similar. Zhao Gao is really famous with this story. So he is an advisor with a lot of ambition. He wants to take control. So he took a deer to the court, said, I present to you this horse. The emperor was like, sir, you must be mistaken. This is a deer and you call it a horse. Okay, well, what do you say? What do you say this is? So he asked the other officers in the court. And some of them just stayed silent. Some of them tried to say, oh, yes, it's a horse, and tried to agree with him. Some people said, no, that's ridiculous. This is a different animal. It's not a horse. And later on, he found excuses to just kill those people who disagreed. So he really took control. No one dared to question him anymore. So you see, the second emperor already lost control, and still the really cruel rule of the empire continues. So it soon led to rebellion from the people, even though they had no metal as weapon. So Chen Sheng Wu Guang, these are the 2 names that's associated with farmer rebellion. And it is said it's because of the really harsh punishments. They had a lot of rules, and whichever rule you break, they will punish you really dearly. So when these people, they were leading a group for a task given by the government. And there was a heavy rain and they were late. They said, oh no, we're late, we're not going to get to the place at that date. We're going to get killed. So they said, we're going to die anyway. Let's fight against the government. At least that's what they told the people. Now there is the alternative claim that maybe they lied to the group because they wanted to rebel against the government anyway. They exaggerated the situation. The punishment of being late was not death. But anyway, the point stands that the government has such harsh rules that people get punished and they get duties that the government asks them to do all the time. They cannot have a peaceful life. And so they started to resist. Yes, is that a question?
Yes. Did every break of a law lead to death?
No. It could be you need to pay a fine or need to stay in prison. You can get beaten. I don't know the details. You can look it up, but right now I don't know the details. Okay, so of course, although the first rebellion did not overthrow the government, the later ones did. And if you ever play Chinese chess, you're probably familiar with this chessboard. And it's written 楚和汉界. This is from the Zhou and Han. So these are the two major forces later on in the rebellion against the Qing government. So there are two kingdoms basically established by those people, Liu Bang, who was the leader of Han, and Xiang Yu, the leader of Zhou. They started early on cooperating, and later on they had overthrown the Qing government and they were competing with each other. We can look at Liu Bang. He later became the first emperor of the Han dynasty. So he defeated Xiang Yu of the Zhou kingdom. He had very important three followers who did a lot of the job for them. Xiao He, this is like the prime minister. Zhang Liang, he's a person with the strategy. He's the advisor. Han Xin is a general. He's really good at managing the army and going to battle. Let's look at a story before we continue with this. Let's look at the story. And this is a story of Taoist wisdom. And it's a kind of strange encounter, passing the shoe on the bridge, 一上那履. What does that mean? So this is talking about Zhang Liang. He only just failed in an attempt to set up, to assassinate the emperor. So he ran away. And now he's walking slowly, and he got to a small bridge. It was an old man with rough clothing, and the old man threw his shoe down below the bridge and said, "Young guy, go down and pick up the shoe." He's like, what is going on here? He's really surprised, like he is shocked. He wanted to beat him up. But it's an old guy, okay, I will suppress my anger and I will just do it. He went down and take the shoe. The old man said, "Okay, put it on for me." Okay, well, I have gone this far. I will just do what he says. I will endure, no anger. So the old man is just receiving the shoe, and then he laughed. He left. Zhang Liang was really surprised. Oh, this guy, this old man is not a simple person. He must be something. So he was looking at the old man walking away. Then the old man returned. He said, "Good young man, you can be taught. Wait for 5 days. 5 days from now, when the sun goes up, come here, meet me. Okay, well, Zhang Liang thought, this person is really special. I have to see what he has to say. So he waited for 5 days. And he got to the place. The old man was already there. And the old man was angry. You had an appointment with an old person. How can you be late? Wait another 5 days. Okay, well, then he went there at the time when the cock was singing, right? So it was really early. But the old man was already there. The old man was angry. How can you be later than me? Wait another 5 days. So then the last time he went there at midnight. This time I must be correct. I will not be late because it's not tomorrow yet. So when it's tomorrow, even if he's here immediately, I'm not later than him. The old man came. That's more like it. That's the way it should be. Huh? And the old man gave him a book and said, read this, then you can become the teacher of the king, which means the advisor of the leader, right? And, wait for 10 years and you will have a new appearance, like a new condition of the country. 13 years later, if you come to see me at that location, there's a yellow stone, that's me. Yellow stone. Okay, and he said nothing more, he left. And this is a book of military strategy. So he studied this and he became the advisor of Liu Bang. And he was a decisive character in establishing the Han Dynasty. So what is all this strange story about? Professor Lü Shihao of Taiwan University has a very nice introduction on this. Basically, how do we interpret this story? There is the interaction between Zhang Liang and the old man. And nothing was really said on the surface. It was in the interaction. Basically, the old man was trying to catch his attention. And he was testing him. He was testing if he could suppress his anger and just do as asked. And okay, this guy, he has patience and he knows how to control his anger. Then I will test him. I will go away. And I come back. He was waiting. He knows I had a message. Then I will test him and say, 5 days later, meet me here. And then he was picking on him and saying, how can you be later than the old man? You had an appointment with an old man. You should be earlier. Now, when I was really small, I thought the story was about being polite to the old people. You should be earlier than the old people. Although this is, of course, also correct, but this is not the important point of the story, because he was teaching him. In Taoist culture, there is the idea of 点化 or 领悟. It means you inspire or enlighten someone with a message which is not spoken. What was the old man telling Zhang Liang? I said, at dawn, when the sun goes up, you meet me here. And if you go there around the time the sun will go up, you will not be certain. You have to come midnight the previous day. So you set up a situation where you would never fail. He was teaching him how to form the condition that ensures success. And this is the idea he taught him first. In using any military tactics, you have to know the concept of setting up the situation where you cannot fail. Then you wait for the enemy to take the next move. This is called xian, which means first. And xian doesn't only mean the first in time, but in fact in a condition where you set up xian, that means you determine the condition. You set up the rule of the game so that you will not fail. And that was the message. We go back to the Han Dynasty. So there are 3 of them. And how did they defeat the Chu kingdom? They had an agreement. Say, we will have border, which is Chu He Han Jie. We will have border. You rule here, I rule here. And we will be like siblings, we will support each other. We don't fight anymore. When he was on his way back to his new capital, so to say, they decided, I'm going to burn the path. So there's the plank road that's built on the side of the mountain. They said, let's burn it. And let this be a message to say that, look, we're not coming back this way, so we are not fighting you anymore. We just stay there in peace. And then they started to repair the road slowly. And the enemy was watching. The Chu kingdom was watching. They are repairing this road. Maybe they want to come back. What do they want to do? Let's watch. And then they walked around the other side of the mountain to the place known as Chenchang. So, 暗度陈仓 means you attract attention here, but you actually go to the destination another way. And battle continued. They attacked the Chu kingdom. And in a situation where the Chu army was surrounded, they got people of the Chu kingdom, or maybe people who learned how to sing their songs. They started singing. They said, okay, soldiers, now you sing their songs. So they started singing the local songs of the Chu kingdom. And the soldiers who are surrounded, they started crying. They think of home. They don't have the will to fight anymore. So 四面楚歌 is a term later on used to refer to a really dangerous situation. You're surrounded all sides and you have no chance. This is how they broke the will of the enemy. So the soldiers cannot fight anymore, then they advance. The leader, Xiang Yu, he ran all the way to the side of the river, and there was an old man on a small boat saying, I know you, you're the leader of the Chu kingdom. Come, I will take you over the river. You run quickly. But he refused. He said, I took so many soldiers from home. And, they died far away. I have no faith to meet my countrymen anymore. 无颜见江东父老. It means I have no faith to see the people at the east side of the river. So he committed suicide. He cut his own throat at the river. He didn't go across. His kingdom ended. In the Tang Dynasty, there was a poet that wrote about him. 胜败兵家事不齐，包羞忍辱是男儿. It means the winning or losing result of military affair is hard to predict. A true man is one that can endure the disgrace of failure, so you can start again. On the east side of the river, there's so many talented and strong young men. If you start again, you never know what the outcome will be. That's how, some people judge him later on. He shouldn't have given up. But that was his choice. And so they established the Han Dynasty, and the general here, Han Xin, he ended up dying miserably because he was considered a threat. He knows how to use the army, and he shows ambition to power. So the emperor or maybe the wife of the emperor, it was said, had doubt. We don't trust this guy. So they set him up to go into the palace and killed him. In two different writings, we see similar statements. First one from 越王勾践世家, so this is referring to the spring-autumn period, and 华阴侯列传 is referring directly to Han Xin, this general. It says, 狡兔死，良狗烹，高鸟尽，良弓藏. So it means when the purpose is already fulfilled, the tool is not important anymore. We already defeated the Chu kingdom. The general is not important anymore. Now he's a threat. So if the rabbits are gone, we already hunted all the rabbits, then the hunting dog will be cooked. He becomes food. If the birds are depleted, then the bow is useless. Now we put it away. Therefore, if the enemy state falls, the advisor will die. He's useless now. He's only competing for power with the leader. So this is also connected to the idea of 共患难 or 共富贵, which means at the hard times you can share the difficulties, you can work together. But you have to be careful, because some people, when you achieved what you want, when you now have the good time, is he willing to share the benefits? Is he willing to share all the results of your work? Maybe he will try to kick other people away. This is the lesson. And Zhang Liang, the advisor, he knows this lesson. He didn't ask for power. He actually said, oh, I will go back and I will do farming, whatever. And he lived long after, because the emperor did not consider him to be a threat. Let's go to the next one. The Han Dynasty is the longest dynasty in Chinese history. When Liu Bang entered the capital, he made a contract with the people. The previous government has so many harsh laws. I will make a deal with you. We have 3 rules. The killers will die. If you hurt other people or you take what is not yours, you will be punished. This is the criminal law of the Han Dynasty. There are only 3 rules. Of course, later on there are other things, there are regulations about farming and trade and other things. But this is the idea, this is the criminal law. You get punished for wrongdoings for those 3 reasons. If you kill people, if you hurt people, if you take other people's property. They also made a covenant with the local laws, saying, those who are not of the Liu family, but claim themselves to be king, will be attacked by all the lords. Those who have not established credit, but established themselves, positions, will be killed, executed by all. Zhu, this is the verb for killing when someone is making trouble and you kill them to save the day, which means they're doing wrong. Okay, and they also have a structure which is called 郡国并行. So they have the counties and the feudal kingdoms in parallel. Now this we have to discuss a little bit. The feudal system is when you have no power to control all the areas. You establish a local king and say, you will be the local king to take care of this area for me. The county is, I will send an officer which I know and trust to the area. And the officer will do everything for me according to my decisions. When the Zhou dynasty was established, of course, they sacked the capital of Shang dynasty. Right after, they said, the son of the previous king, you can be the local lord in this place. The same place, you will control this area. But now I am the heavenly Son, you should serve me. But in fact, this is still the same family controlling this place. In the Qing dynasty, when they abolished feudalism, they said, no, the whole family is gone. You have no power anymore. I send my people. I will control this area. In the Han dynasty, it's again kind of the same situation because there are places they cannot fully control. They had to establish local lords, which are the relatives of the emperor. This later on led to troubles, so they had to change the system again. Okay, what about the social system, or like the social condition? Let's look at how the country is doing at the end of the Qing dynasty and also the battle between Chu and Han. When they established the Han dynasty, it is said, 自天子不能拒，君嗣. This means the emperor cannot have 4 horses to drive his chariot that's of the same pure color. They cannot find, from the whole country, they cannot find 4 horses which are purely white for the emperor. And the government officials, like the generals and the advisors, they would have to take bullock carts, they have to use cattle, which is like not looking very nice, People have no savings. They have no extra resources to save. So in the later period, which is called Wenjing-zhi-zhi, so the later following 2 emperors, Wen and Jing, they had this period where they really worked on economy and letting the people develop. So it is in accordance with the Taoist idea, Huang Lao Zhi Shu. So of course this Huang Lao is like the Yellow Emperor and Lao Tzu, so it refers to the Taoist tradition. So they follow the Taoist idea, let people rest, don't let them do so much work for the government, just let them develop things for their own lives, don't interfere with them. So they have 轻徭薄赋, which means they don't ask for labor duties so much, they don't ask for money, they don't ask for tax or food so much from the people. Okay, and we'll go to the next one. Let's look at the story. This is Wen Di. This is the first emperor in Wenjing-zhi-zhi. So what I just mentioned to be those 2 emperors. Wen Di is a title that was given to him later on. So when you see those titles, they are not the names of the emperors. These are titles given later on. This is called Shi Hao. So this is the title when they die, when the emperor dies, people will have a meeting. They say, we will come up with a title to summarize the life of this leader. So if you see any, TV series that would refer to the person when he was alive by his death title, they don't know what they're doing. There are such examples, but let's not go into that. This is the story of Lu Tai Xi Jing. So the emperor Wen wishes to build a balcony at the palace. Okay, then he called in workers to estimate. It's worth 100 gold, he was told, and he was surprised. 100 units of gold. That's equivalent to the belonging of 10 middle families. I have been given my father's palace and houses. I often fear I'm not worthy. 常恐羞之, which means I fear to insult what's given to me. I have not done enough to be justified for what I'm given. So how can I, in addition, build a balcony? I cannot do that. He said, 100 units of gold. My people are poor. Let's not do that. Next one. Same emperor. This is the story about an officer. This is a 廷尉. So this is the title for a position that is responsible for executing the law. Zhang Shizhi, he is the officer. Shizhi为廷尉, okay? He was the law officer. The highness was traveling out from the palace through Zhongwei Bridge. A person walked out from below the bridge, and the horses were frightened. It was a chaos, and they sent the guards to capture him, gave him to the law officer. So then the officer asked him, okay, what were you doing there? Yeah, I'm the citizen. I heard the traffic regulation, because when the emperor goes out, people should avoid him. So there's the traffic regulation. The emperor is passing by here, then everyone should go away. Now, he was hiding below the bridge because he heard there is the traffic regulation, but he was waiting for a long time. He thought, yeah, I think now the emperor has already passed. So he walked out, and then he ran into the emperor's chariot. So the officer concluded, okay, a person offended the traffic regulation should be fined. The report actually made the emperor angry. He said, this person scared my horses himself. My horses, luckily, are gentle. If it was, another horse, maybe I would get hurt. And you, the officer, only judged that he should be punished with a fine. Let's look at how he deals with this. This is one story where you see the officer or the scholar, right, in their position. They hold on to the right values. They resisted the power from doing, the wrong thing. The officer said, the law is what the emperor and the people commonly have. Today, the law states so, and the punishment is harder, then the law has no credibility to people. Also, if just then, so be it. If, Highness, you decided to kill him immediately, so be it. But today, it is so that it's given to me, the law officer. The law officer, 廷尉, is the balance for all under heaven. If I have a bias, then the use of law everywhere would be influenced. How can people know what to do? The law has no credibility anymore. We would just have a bias because the emperor is angry. Then the law is worthless. There's a long silence. The emperor said, the officer's judgment is correct. Pay your fine, go away. From the text we know, the emperor has power over the law. He said, so be it if you decided to kill him just then. According to the written laws, he should pay this fine. But if the emperor is angry, he said, I will kill you. He can. But then he decided to give this person to the law officer. The law officer insisted. He said, I insist to do what the law states, because the law is what you have in common with the people. This is our agreement with all the people. We cannot lose the credibility of the law. And, this is the kind of stories that get recorded from the Han Dynasty. Let's look at the next one. The next emperor, Han Jingdi, so now we're going back to the problem with the feudal system. They had relatives as local lords. They are getting more and more influence. So it was said, maybe we should take away part of their power. They gave the order. They will take away some of the benefits the lords have, which directly led to the rebellion of the 7 kingdoms, which they have to put down later on. And that means it is really not a stable situation if we have the local lords and give them so much power, because when they get more powerful, they want to challenge the central government, and maybe they want to be the emperor. So the emperor, following that, Han Wudi, this is very important emperor in the Han Dynasty. A lot of things happened in his time. Then he decided, I will have this order, 推恩令, which means to distribute the favor. What does that mean? In the old times, there was always the 嫡长子继承, which means the firstborn son will take over what the father has. So if you are a local lord, you will give your title and all your belongings and all your subjects, all the land, the people, to your first son. And he will be the next local lord. When you pass away or when you are too old, you don't want to deal with it anymore. Now, 推恩令 means if you have more than one children, you have to distribute your benefit equally. So you have to give all your children a share of your land and title. And basically, they are still considered nobles, but your kingdom splits up. So after a few generations, they only have small houses and a few servants. You can see this in the story of three kingdoms. Liu-Bei, he is known to be 中山靖王之后, so he is a descendant of a noble family. But what is he doing? He's making shoes and selling shoes. He has to make his own business because the kingdom was split up between so many children. He has no wealth or power anymore. And this is the result of this decree, that they deal with the problem of the local lords by saying you have to distribute the favor. And of course, this is supported by all the other sons because they want their share. Yeah? Han Wudi also established that we will now have 儒家, or commonly translated as Confucianism, as the standard value of our country. All the other schools of philosophy are not important. We follow this one. And they started to monopolize the salt and iron business. It's only sold by the government, controlled by the government. And they sent Zhang Qian, this guy, to the west region, Xiyu. So they opened up, by this exploration, they opened up the path to the west region. They connected with other countries over there. And this region later on became the Silk Road. And Sima Qian, we have been using his quotes all through this presentation. Sima Qian, he wrote 史记. 史记 is the record of the grand historian, at least written in English. 史记 basically means the historic records. And he is known as 太史公, the grand historian. This is one of the most important collection of records for Chinese history. Also, interaction with neighbors. This Han Wudi, he attacked the Shonu, the nomads to the north, and Nanyue, later on known as Vietnam, and Chaoxian, later on known as Korea. So we should look at the neighbor more closely. Right? So this is the exploration to the west region, and they actually found out like lowland and some other different countries and cities. Then they had troops going out to attack Shonu, and troops going down in the south to attack Nanyue and also Korea. So this is a time when a lot of things are happening, and China was in a state of expansion. Now let's look at Shonu. Shonu is a really famous northern nomad that was a big threat to the Central Kingdom. It is said they started with this person, 𝕁𝕠𝕚𝕟. 单于 is the title of the leader of Shonu. And he was a hostage, so to say. So he lives in a neighboring country. Then his father decided to attack that country. but he's the hostage, he might be killed. After this incident, he got out, but he really hated his father, so he started, he went back to the area, he started to raise his own force. The Shonu has a kind of tool called 𝕁𝕠𝕚𝕟. It's a kind of arrow. The arrowhead has an opening, so it's technically a whistle. So when the arrow goes out, it goes psh, so that it's a signal to the troops, so everyone will shoot in the same direction. This is the special arrow, the whistle arrow for the leader. So he started to use this. So he started to collect people who will follow him. And one day, he put his horse there, and he shot at the horse. And people hesitated. Like, really? This is your favorite horse? Like, how important is it a horse would be, a good horse would be to the nomad? They're always riding the horse. So some people hesitated, they didn't shoot. Then he killed those people who hesitated. That was a message. When I decide to kill my horse, you have to follow this. Then, after a while, he was leading the same people running around, and he shot at his wife. And people started to blindly follow his order. So he knew he was ready. So he went near to where his father is, and he shot at his father, and all his followers were shooting towards the same direction, and his father was killed. He became the leader of the clan, and he basically unified the nomads around that area. So they became really strong, and they became a big problem for the central kingdom. In the north, basically, they have the sheep and horses. They always go to where there is grass, and when the winter comes, it gets really cold, and now they have a problem. They don't have enough resources. What they do is they go south and rob the people in the south. So, you know, their pattern of behavior is kind of like the Viking pirates. You're just doing your own farming there, doing your own business. Sometime they will show up and rob your belonging and burn your houses. This is why they needed the Great War, so they wouldn't come through easily. In 史记 and 汉书, there is a record of how the Han people saw those people, right? So this is the impression they had for Shonu. 逐水草，习射猎，望君臣，略昏患，其徒无人。Seeking water and grass, used to shooting and hunting. They have no concept of lord and subjects or marriage. They're just riding around with no wars. 持徒无人 means riding around, and there's no war. They have no buildings. And this understanding is like roughly what people understood about them. They say they have no idea of lord and subject because, of course, the structure is not as stable as the southern people. You know, the lord can be challenged, they can be killed, and the stronger one will take the lead. And they also have a different convention for marriage, which is considered weird. So later on, a different solution other than war was given. 和亲, this is using marriage to make peace. So they sent this girl, Wang Zhaojun, to be married to the leader of the Shonu. At that time, it was Hu Hanye, the Chanyu. He was already kind of old. He asked for a wife from the south. So the government was saying, okay, we should send someone to be married to the leader of the Shonu. They had this announcement. Wang Zhaojun took the paper and said, I volunteer, I will go north, married to the king of the Shonu. She was a servant in the palace, in Hougong, so the rear palace. So this is a place where potentially the emperor can choose his concubines. Well, she was there, and she was never noticed. She said, I'm going to go north. I'm going to make this happen. So she was adopted as the daughter of the emperor, at least by name, right? They say, this is the daughter of the emperor, and she is going to be married to the king of Shonu. She went there. It's only after 2 years the leader of the Shonu, Hu Han Ye Chanyu, died. He was already very old. And then she sent a letter back to the palace. It was already the next emperor in the Han Dynasty. She said, my husband died. I asked to return south to my home. What's happening there is actually they have this different convention. If the husband dies, all the concubines will then be passed on to his brother or his son. So, of course, then his son becomes, if he's powerful enough, his son will become the new leader of the clan. And also he will take over all the belongings of the father, including the wives. Of course, not his own mother, that doesn't make sense, but women are passed on to the family of the husband as property. This is how they deal with this in the north in that time, because there were really few people, really few resources. This is how their family works. And this is really shocking to the southern people in Han Dynasty. Like, are you crazy? You're going to marry the wife to the next generation? But the emperor said, let's keep peace. He wrote back and said, Zhao Jun, follow the convention of the nomad. Marry the next husband. So she stayed there. And later on, of course, she had daughters and son later on. She became influential in the society of the nomad. So later on, there was a historian who wrote a poet about this. The poem says, 汉武雄图载史篇，长城万里变烽烟, which means the earlier emperor, Han Wudi, he was always doing war. He wanted to conquer Shonu. So it was recorded all over history. He had this ambition to conquer, but that means all along the Great War, it was the beacon fire. It was battling going on, always. That was too costly. Now, how about, it's actually better to just have the music of pipa, which is the instrument she's holding. How about that we send music over there and we will never hear the sound of the whistle arrow for the next 50 years. By the way, she is often drawn with this pipa, but in the Han Dynasty, the instrument referred to as pipa didn't look like this. We can maybe talk about this when we talk about instruments. But this is Shonu. This is the really important neighbor of China in the Han Dynasty. They threatened the empire a lot. It is said that these are probably the same people as Hans who went to Europe and indirectly led to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. This was proposed first by a French scholar and later by a German scholar, if I remember correctly, but this is only suspected. The last record in China when they said the major force of Shonu disappeared, maybe they moved away. There was a 400-year blank. There was no record until Hans showed up in Europe. It's not certain if they are really the same group of people or if those are actually the descendants of Shonu in China. But they were really powerful and influential. They shaped history of China. Later on, there will be Shonu also in later period. They actually was one of the leading forces in the period called Wuhu Lanhua. So they later on mixed with Han Chinese. Later there is the Eastern Han period. So Han dynasty was interrupted by Xingmang. There was an emperor which is not from the Liu family. He established himself as the new government. And after the disruption, the empire took the capital, moved to the east. This is called then the Eastern Han, and therefore the earlier period is referred to as the Western Han because the capital is on the west side. This is a period where you see Buddhism started to come into China. They had this Baima-Si, the Temple of White Horse. By now you already know how important or how much White Horse means to Han Chinese people. They're talking about white horses all the way. And it was really a long time that there was the competition of the queen's family with Huanguan, the officers inside the palace. Long competition. They tried to bring the emperor closer to them. The two sides are always trying to control the emperor. And Cai Lun made papers. Later on, there was the rebellion of the Yellow Turban and the incident of Shichangshi, which later on led to the period known as the Three Kingdoms. This is probably the most famous period of Chinese history to foreigners. We will continue with the Eastern Han dynasty next time. I will ask everyone now to stand up. OK， 下课。
就是这个
OK, so I don't know how long it is. 12 sharp.